They tell you that every job has its quirks. A leaky faucet, a flickering light, a boss who breathes down your neck. It's part of the package, right? But when I signed the contract for the Blackwood Museum, the quirk wasn't buried in the fine print. It was written in bold, red ink at the very bottom of the page. A single sentence that felt more like a commandment than a company policy between last 3 a.m. and 4 a.m. The elevator is off. Use the stairs. No exceptions. I remember laughing. Just a nervous little chuckle. I figured it was just some old building's electrical glitch, some weird power cycle to save on costs. Primera, hua, es wrong. My name is Elias, and I've been a night guard for 10 years now. I thought I'd seen everything this city's underbelly had to offer. Break-ins, vandals, even the occasional lost soul trying to sleep in the ancient history wing. But nothing, and I mean nothing, can prepare you for the smell of copper and old wax. It was my 3rd week on the job. The Blackwood Museum, by night, is a completely different animal. During the day, it's alive with the chatter of school kids and tourists. But at night, it's a tomb of marble and glass, where every little sound echoes for what feels like miles. The silence is so deep, so absolute, that it feels heavy, like a physical weight pressing down on you. I was making my rounds, flashlight beam cutting through the oppressive darkness of the grand hall. The polished floors reflected the moonlight filtering through the high-arched windows, making the shadows of the statues dance and stretch. I checked my watch, 3:12 a.m., and that's when I heard it, a wet, dragging sound. It was coming from the far end of the main hall, near the Roman antiquities. It was a horrible, sickening noise, like someone pulling a heavy, blood-soaked carpet across the floor. My heart went into overdrive. My training screamed at me to investigate, but every primal instinct screamed louder to run. Primera, panicked. In that moment of pure terror, I completely forgot the rule. The big, red-inked rule. I bolted for the only place I felt safe, the security hub on the 1st floor, and the fastest way to get there was the elevator. I slammed my hand on the call button, desperate to get away from that sound. The heavy bronze door slid shut with a final, echoing thud, a sound like a guillotine dropping. The air inside the small cabin was stale and cold. I jammed my finger on the button for the 1st floor, but it didn't light up. Nothing happened. Instead, a rusted metal plate above the door, one I'd never noticed before, flickered to life. A dim, orange number glowed. 11. Then, with a low groan, 12. The elevator didn't stop. It just kept climbing, the cables screaming like dying animals, a sound that vibrated through the floor and up my spine. Then, the number 13 glowed a deep, sickening crimson. The doors creaked open. The air on the 13th floor was thick. It was heavy and metallic, and it tasted like pennies like old blood. I cautiously stepped out into a long, dimly lit room filled with statues. But these weren't the museum's usual marble or bronze figures. They were wax hundreds of them, arranged in neat, unsettling rows. The first one I walked past was a man sitting in a chair. His head was slumped to one side. His throat opened up in a grotesque, smiling gash. A pool of dark, glossy wax. Blood spilled from the wound onto the floor, glistening in the faint light. It looked disturbingly real. I leaned in closer, my curiosity overriding my fear for just a second. I saw a small, plastic name tag pinned to his guard uniform. The name, it was the guard who worked here before me. The one they said had just quit without notice. My blood ran cold. Then I looked at the next row of exhibits, and my heart stopped. It was me. There were dozens of them. A gallery of my own demise. A wax Elias with his eyes gouged out, empty sockets staring into nothing. A wax Elias with his chest cavity hollowed out, filled with what looked like real black crows, their beady eyes glinting. Another wax Elias, hanging from a rusty meat hook, skin peeled back to reveal the raw, red muscle and sinew underneath. They were so horrifically detailed I could see the individual pores in the skin, the tiny beads of sweat on the forehead, the terror frozen in their waxy eyes. Then I heard a wet blink. I realized then that the room was different. The statue of me hanging from the meat hook. I swore it was 2 feet closer than it was a second ago. I rubbed my eyes. just a natural reflex to the disbelief. That was a big mistake. In that half second of darkness, I heard the screech of metal scraping on stone. When I opened my eyes, the crow's version of me was standing right in front of my face, inches from my nose. Its wax fingers were reaching for my throat. They weren't cold and hard like I expected. They were warm, and they were dripping with fresh, hot blood. I stumbled back, gasping, and that's when I saw it. Every time I blinked, the gallery moved. 100 different versions of my own death, closing in, forming a silent, tightening circle around me. I tried to scream, but the air felt like liquid wax filling my lungs, suffocating me. It was then, out of the corner of my eye, that I saw a Handaria, human hand reaching out from inside one of the statues near the back. It was twitching, the fingers spasming weakly. They weren't just statues, they were shells, prisons. The museum wasn't a gallery, it was a farm. It waits for the guards to break the one simple rule. It lures them to this floor, and it drains their souls, preserving their final moments of agony in a wax tomb for eternity. I didn't run for the elevator. I knew that was a trap. I ran for the only other way out. I could see a small maintenance door at the far end of the gallery labeled emergency shaft. I threw my body against it, the cheap wood splintering. I don't remember the fall or the screams I must have made as I tumbled down the dark, dusty chute. The next thing I remember is waking up on the cold marble floor of the lobby. The first rays of dawn were breaking through the windows. It was 6 a.m. I was covered in a thin, translucent layer of white film, like a second skin made of cooled wax. It peeled off like dried glue. I quit that day. Didn't even bother to pick up my last paycheck. But I haven't really slept since, because every time I close my eyes, every single time I blink, I hear that wet, dragging sound in the darkness of my own room, and I feel the air around me getting warmer, like melting wax. So if you ever see a job posting for the Blackwood Museum, if you're ever looking for some easy night work, Justo Ignore Italiano, keep scrolling. Because they aren't looking for a guard, they're looking for a new exhibit.